I am CARBO Brother. I'm Chris Nelson, President of CARBO. Really excited to introduce the Ruger LC9s EC9s trigger spring kit for these great little Ruger pistols. So we took it down from 4 3/4 of a pound to right at 3, just barely under 3. So roughly from 5 to 3 if you wanted to go ahead and general average it. So a 2-pound reduction, roughly. 35% trigger pull reduction. So really nice, put you in that sweet spot. Nothing too light, but right there in that nice happy medium. Really excited about this. 3-spring kit. It's a good combined reduction all the way around. Really excited about it. Let's jump on over to tabletop, show you how you put this baby in. Parts needed for this build: the Ruger LC9s EC9s trigger spring kit by MCARBO includes a lighter striker spring, lighter trigger return spring, and a lighter striker block spring. Tools needed for this build: bench block, hammer, 1/16 inch punch, 3/32 inch punch, 1/8 inch punch, little micro tip flathead screwdriver, and as always guys, make sure we're an iPro. Now as usual, let's go ahead and check our firearms together, make sure they're clear. For the EC9s, LC9s, it does have a mag safety, so we will need an empty magazine to test the trigger pull. So we'll have that handy. All right, check the chamber, check the bolt face, check the magazine well. This firearm's clear. All right, let's go ahead and see what kind of stock factory trigger pull we got. Like I said, mag safety requires the mag to be inserted. Empty mag, of course. All right, we're gonna test this trigger pull and see what we got to start with. On this gauge here, it's zeros all the way around, but you'll see that N is number of pulls, and this is gonna be our combined average down here, and this will be the actual reading per pull. So we're gonna do a 5-pull average just to see what we get. 4 pounds, 12.5 ounces. All right, go ahead and hit enter, and it's starting to calculate. So we'll just continue to do this little operation here to get our 5-pull average. Just takes any human error out of it. 4 pounds, 12.1 ounces. 4 pounds, 8 ounces. 4 pounds, 8.5 ounces. 4 pounds, 8.8 ounces. So our 5-pull average is about 4 3/4 of a pound. All right, not bad, just under 5, but it could be improved, could be a little bit better. Let's see what we can get with this spring kit. All right, so we get started with a simple little field strip. Just need to remove the slide from the frame here. You'll see your takedown pin in there. There's this little cover right here that we got to depress and then push that pin through. But we're going to push that pin through on the opposite side here so you can see the hole's much smaller. The pin can only go out from right to left here, so you couldn't push it through here. Obviously, slide's in the way. So we're going to push with our little 1/16 inch punch from this side, and that's going to allow us the clearance over here to pop it right out. Plus, we got to line up that little half circle with the pin. So we'll take our little micro tip, and we're going to just press down on that cover, just like that, and we're going to pull back till we line up that half circle with the takedown pin, and then take our little 1/16 inch punch and just push from that back side there, and it'll come right out like that. And it's smooth all the way around. All right, and then we just pull it forward, separate the two. Pretty simple. And there's a little inside view, so you can see our slide. This is striker fired, so the striker assembly is up here. We're gonna be taking that out, replacing 2 springs up here, and then we're gonna work on the frame last to get to that trigger return spring, which is pretty much standard across the board for all those Rugers, the LCP 1 and 2, the way it's all situated in there, the trigger return spring. You'll see the similarities here in a second. So we'll put the frame aside. We'll go ahead and swap out all the springs here on the slide. Let's go ahead and compress your recoil spring and guide rod. Pops right out like that. And then our barrel, just push up from underneath and it slides right out, just like that. All right, so we've got it stripped down fairly well here. So what we have to do is get this back plate off. And to do that, we've got to relieve pressure on it. So that striker sleeve is what's putting pressure right up on that back plate there. So to get that off, you'll see there's a tiny hole down there. You got to have a 1/16 inch punch for a lot of different things on this build. So make sure you have one. So you'll just take your 1/16 inch punch and you're going to put it right in that little hole there on the striker sleeve, which is kind of handy. And you're going to push down, and then you can get access. Push that plate right off. So pretty simple and straightforward. I'm glad they included that handy little takedown feature. All right, so now we can just push out the striker. All one assembly, just like that. And we're gonna be replacing the striker spring here. And then we wanna get that striker block safety out. So you'll notice, see that little hole right there? And it's got just the perfect size for you to stick your 1/16 inch punch in there, which is great. All right, so you got your 1/16 inch punch inserted into that hole, and that's really handy. It makes it real nice to be able to take that pin out. And then just take your micro tip or another punch and push down on that striker block safety so you can give clearance to that pin and allow it to actually back out. And you'll see it start coming out there. Kind of sticks on that punch real nice. and that's it. So you can see there's the pin right there. And it's got a little cutout there for a 1/16 inch punch, which is perfect, and then it's smooth on the other side. So we'll stick the smooth end back in first upon reassembly. All right, now we just gotta get the striker block safety out. You can literally just flip it over and it'll fall out, but since it's on camera here, I want you to see everything. I'll be a little surgical about it. So using my pliers, not necessary. But this gives you a good picture of how it orients inside the slide there. So you got your spring right there. Striker block spring will go right inside. There's a little hole on the bottom, and then there's this channel here. That's where the pin goes through. So this side with the channel cutout and the striker block safety is facing that outer wall on the slide. It's always nice to understand the concept. You know, the pin's got to locate in there. So when we go put it back together, it's kind of more natural. We're not having to overthink it. And obviously too, you can see there's that stair-step pattern there on the striker block safety. You know, that stair-step pattern is facing back of the slide there. Pretty straightforward. All right, we'll set those items down and we're good to go at this point. We're all stripped down on the slide here. We can go ahead and lay all the parts out, review them one more time, and switch out the springs. All right, so here's all the items here that we've taken apart so far. So recoil spring and guide rod, our barrel slide. This is our striker assembly here. So we're gonna remove this striker spring, and it's real simple and straightforward. Just like most any other striker pistols, you'll see how we just push down and remove these two little retainers up here that hold that spring in. And then your striker block safety, the striker block spring, and then the pin that holds it in place and the back plate. All right, so now we're gonna remove this striker spring here. All right, so we're gonna push against this feature. So just get this edge on your bench block down here and grab the side of that striker spring and push down as far as you can. And then you'll see those two little halves, they basically just fall right out. And if they don't, you just peel them out. This little retainer is two pieces just like that. It may look like one solid piece, but it's definitely not. And then the spring will come right up and out, just like that. So the spring is free, and we can go ahead and remove that. We're gonna replace it, and you'll see how those little cups, how they work. You know, when you push that spring down far enough, you can get them in here in this little narrower portion. It allows you to compress them really well. And then there's that little internal sleeve that'll go inside the spring. And then obviously this portion up here is wider so that it captures up against this portion of the striker. So it's real handy. You know, it's simple concept, but it works. And you'll see everybody does it like that. All right, let's replace these. So it's a good time to go ahead and open up our Ruger LC9s EC9s trigger spring kit by MCARBO 3-spring kit. All right, we got you covered. Even got your little target right there. Something to shoot at before you throw it away. All right, so there's your 3-spring kit right there. So lighter striker spring, lighter striker block spring, and a lighter trigger return spring. You know, so it's a combined reduction. So this is how we make it reliable. You know, we want to make sure that you're not going to get light strikes. You're going to get the most reliable primary ignition every time, all the time. So we have to make sure that we do a strategic adjustment amongst various springs, not just one. So it's pretty cool. We did a great job on this one, really excited. And you guys obviously the ones that recommended it. You wanted us to do something. I was like, it's under 5. I mean, you sure? But everybody wants it. Here it is, man. All right, good. So we'll set these other springs aside for a second. Let's just do a quick little comparison. So I've got the MCARBO spring over here, and I've got the factory spring over here. You know, right away you'll notice, hey, the MCARBO spring's slightly lighter. Well, this one hasn't been compressed yet, hasn't taken a set. You know, this one has been under tension, so naturally it's going to be a little shorter. You know, so that's something to obviously consider. Not to mention too, you know, brand new spring should be a little bit longer. That's the idea. So it hasn't been under any tension, so you want to make sure it's new. You know, you're not going to get some worn out spring. So you can see good little difference there. You know, the MCARBO spring has definitely got some more compression to it. You know, so it's a combined reduction. It's not like this thing's going to be flimsy and as light as possible. It's strategic here. It can't just be, oh, lightest spring in the world in your pistol. Doesn't work. All right, so we'll put the factory one aside. We'll take the MCARBO spring. We're going to slide it right over the striker. Now we're going to do the opposite. We're going to press on this feature here on the striker, you know, down in our bench block. We're going to compress the spring at least far enough to get this narrow portion. Remember this narrow portion right here? So we're going to compress the striker spring far enough so we can get that narrow portion exposed, and then put our little cups on there, that retainer, snap them in place, let them drop inside the inside of the spring, and then we're good to go. So we'll push down, edge of our bench block there, nice and compressed. Start grabbing your little cups there, and you know, get one in at a time. And make sure you get that narrow portion there, that sleeve down inside that spring. That's what you're shooting for right away. And then, so once I get them both dropped in, I'm pinching them together like this, and then I let it ride right up, and it locks and locates in place, just like that. Replaced, we're good to go. So now we can take our striker block safety. You can see the factory spring in there. Now these little tiny springs can usually give you a little headache. You know, they don't want to stay in place, they want to fall out when you put them in. we'll just use a little synthetic grease with PTFE to just get them to stick in there, which is always a preferred method. All right, so I got the MCARBO striker block safety spring right here, ready to replace it. We'll pull the factory one out here now, and you can tell right away just massive difference between these two little springs. I mean, we got a good amount of reduction here. It's nice. So you can see, I mean, it's hard to really compress them, but it's definitely evident that this spring is much lighter just looking at it than this little guy here. It's pretty stout. So we'll put this factory one aside. All right, so we want to go ahead and drop in our lighter striker block safety spring, put a little dab of synthetic grease, PTFE, on it. So I got a little bit of grease on there, and that's going to hold it in place. So you just drop down the hole, and that way there, when you go to drop it in the slide, it doesn't just fall out. I mean, alignment is very critical here, so we want to make sure it's in that hole. All right, so we're good there. We've got everything replaced. Now we're ready to put it all back together. All right, so go ahead and grab your slide. First, we're going to drop in our striker block safety into that little oval hole right there on the slide. Remember this little notch cutout channels facing the outside of the slide here. So it's going in this orientation just like this. So we just drop it right in, because remember, we got to get that pin to locate. And you can check your work by making sure that you got that little stair step feature right there. So you should have that little stair step facing the back of the slide here, just like that. All right, now we're going to compress it and get that pin in there. Remember the pin, it's got that hole right there that allows you to pull it out with that 1/16 inch punch. So we'll compress that striker block safety right there. You can just do it with your finger, and then just drop that pin right in that hole right there. Pretty simple and easy. And since we're not trying to take it out, take your 3/32 inch punch and just make sure it's pushed in all the way, and then let go of that striker block safety, and you're good to go. Now we'll just take our striker, and we're going to insert it all the way through. So you just push it all the way in. And most of these striker block safeties won't allow you to push it in until you compress it, but this one's a little different. You know, you'll notice that feature there on the striker. You know, you have to push it in to get that feature to clear. So that's kind of the catch right there. So that's what we're going to do. We just want to make sure it's compressed and ready. So now that we've got that little feature on top of the striker block safety, we can push down on the striker sleeve here and get our back plate on. You'll see it's pretty simple. We're going to do it with the punch, but you're just going to push down on that sleeve there. You know, you can feel it right now. You can push it, and then we're going to just pop our little back plate right on. You'll see that little notch channel there. So there's a little notch on each side. That's where that little back plate's going to ride into. So we got our back plate handy. All right, we want to get it in the proper orientation. So this little oval feature, you know, this rounded square feature is going to go up here and locate in just like that. So we'll kind of get it started, you know, get it in position just like that. I'm going to push down on the table, makes it so much easier. Grab your 1/8 inch punch. You know, all we're going to do is just get it captured like that, and then pop our punch out, and you can see how it's pretty much holding it already, and just push it all the way in. Love that snap. That's a good sound. So that's what we're looking for. And then just try to pull it off. Should be locked and located in place. So we're good to go. So we got everything back in at this point. Awesome. All right, so we'll just throw our barrel back in while we're at it. You know, just kind of drops right into place like that. And then your recoil spring and guide rod, you know, this little feature is going forward. This little smaller, thinner piece is going to locate in the barrel. So we're just dropping it right in, compress it, get it to locate right there, just like that. All right, so the slide's all back together, everything's in there, so we're good. We can set this aside for now, and let's go ahead and focus on the frame. All right, so go ahead and get your frame set up on the bench block. You'll need your 1/8 inch punch. We're going to tap out these two frame pins right here. They're the universal, same, so don't worry about getting them mixed up. We just want to get this aluminum housing out of the polymer frame here so we can actually replace that trigger return spring. So you've got your slide stop here, you got your safety here, and then there's that little cover right there for your takedown pin. Remember that? And then over here, you've got your trigger bar. So notice this trigger bar needs to be protruding through the top of the polymer frame here. All right, we'll go into that again here in a second, but I always like to point out those little things, good little checks along the way. All right, so we'll tap these pins out. You don't even need a hammer. I mean, you can just push them right through. Exactly the same, smooth pins, plastic. All right, now we'll just push up on our slide stop here and get that frame out. And you can push back on the trigger a little bit. That'll help kind of work it all out. And you'll see it all start to come up and out here. Try to keep it together best we can. It helps if you start pinching everything as it's coming out of that polymer frame. We can set that polymer frame aside. There's next to nothing in it except for that mag release, so you can see that there. All right, so here's the aluminum frame here. So you can see there's a little takedown pin cover right there. It's pretty simple. If it fell out, no big deal. So you can see there's two little recesses right there on either side, and it's got an up location and a down location. Those little circular cutouts, and you can see there's two little circular tits there on the back of it. So that's how it functions, and it literally just lays right in. And you'll see when we put it back together how flimsy it kind of just lays in there. Don't worry about that. We'll set it aside. You got your bolt stop here. Got your bolt stop spring right here, so pay attention to that orientation in case this all pops out on you. And then you've got your safety back here and your safety spring right here, so pay attention to that spring orientation as well. You know, it's a good little resource in case it all flies apart, but that's how it functions. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. You know, you got a notch on the top and the bottom of that safety, and you got a little spring that kind of locates inside of it. Pretty simple. It's always kind of cool to see what engineering went into this, and oh, sure enough, I had a spring fall out. Pay attention, and that's exactly why we go through this, and we have a little resource, because we use it too. So you can see how the trigger return spring locates right here on the trigger bar. I'm just gonna put my finger over it, because I'm gonna move this thing, but you can see the trigger bar, the way it works, you know, it's gonna locate right there in that little pocket. So this feature needs to be sticking up like this. So this is the orientation. This one's easy to get mixed around, because it's just flat, straight piece, nothing else to it. I mean, you could put it in wrong. And if you do, it's just not gonna fire. And you're gonna be like, what happened? Well, go back and check this one right here. So let's go ahead and start pulling this stuff apart. You know, we can go ahead and pop off this tension on the trigger bar right now. This is your trigger return spring. There's a lot of tension on this trigger return spring. So this will be a nice reduction right away. And you can see your trigger bar right here, how it's flat, not much to it. You could easily put it in wrong. So we don't want to do that. I mean, just pay attention, just remember that little cutout on the bottom, you know, how it locates against that pin, and that's it. As long as you check that, and we'll go through it again, don't worry. All right, so our trigger return spring is still captured there. All right, we obviously need to get that out. And then over here, try to keep this stuff in if you can. I just had a spring fall out, so I'm gonna throw it back in, just because I don't want to get too far down the road there and we forget about it. So to get this safety spring back in, I'm just gonna drop it right into this little pocket on the frame, and then I'm gonna compress this feature back away from the safety, which should work a little bit better than trying to fight it the other way. There we go. We'll try to keep it all in place, but if it springs out, it springs out. You just put it back in. So what we want to do next is get this pin out, and that pin is what keeps that trigger return spring in place. So that pin goes right through that trigger return spring and the trigger sleeve there and locates inside the trigger. So what we need to do is tap out that little pin for that safety blade to get access on the underside there, because on the underside is where that pin can be pushed through the top, because there's a head on that pin right here. We're just going to leave this side up. Hopefully we don't knock any of those springs out of place, but if we do, no big deal. You know, then we're just going to tap out that little tiny pin. You just need your 1/16 inch punch, and most likely we'll be able to just push it right out. And I'm just trying to keep good even pressure there on that trigger. You know, I'm not too worried about the frame over here. I can grab a rag, kind of support it, but most importantly, you know, these MIM triggers, you just want to be a little careful with them. You know, they are metal injection molded, so they're not the most durable thing, so you don't want to put any undue stress on them. So I got my little 1/16 inch punch in there, a couple taps to get that safety blade out while I'm kind of holding that trigger in place, and I'm supporting the rest of the frame. All right, so I got a good amount of it out, and likely that's all you're going to need. So I've got the rest of it captured. You'll notice inside your trigger safety there, you got a little torsion spring. Just pay attention to how those little legs are situated in there. So this is the inside of the trigger safety blade, and this is the portion here your finger would be pressing against. This is the portion up inside the housing. So just take notice of this torsion spring here. So you got a little leg up here in the top right corner, and a little leg down here in the bottom left corner. And that's probably the best way to remember it. So we'll set that safety down. Now we've got access to that pin right there. So you can see that pin just staring right at you. Take your 1/16 inch punch again, and we're just gonna push that thing right out. Pretty simple. It's going right out the top there. There's the pin. Nothing much to it. So we'll set that down. Now you can see how it all goes together. And something I want to point out now, because this is going to be an immediate question we've got to ask ourselves, is how we put this thing in. Well, just pay attention to the orientation right now. When that loop is in there and captured, and you can kind of see it, it's straight inside there. That loop is level. You know, it's horizontal. You can see it right there. So this is the orientation. So that leg's pointing forward when that loop is just level right there like that. So we want to replicate that exactly. So pull out that heavy trigger return spring. Go ahead and swap that out. So I got the MCARBO spring down here, and there's a heavy factory one. You can see how beefy this thing is. So we'll get rid of that factory one, keep them all in a bag. It's handy to have spare parts. All right, so we just replicated that orientation. Got the loop in like this, got the leg kicked forward like that. Now we're gonna put that pin right back through. Just kind of hold it in place. Another little trick is, you know, go ahead and get it started. So I got my 1/16 inch punch, I'm threading it all the way through, right through the top there. simple and easy. You know, I want to make sure I got a guide for that pin and everything else is staying in place. All right, so pressing down on your table against that punch, you know, it would be handy to have needle nose pliers at this point, or some kind of pliers, to go ahead and just set that pin in. Kind of gives you a little assist. At least get it started. All right. And you just grab your other end of your punch and just kind of tap it through. All right, and we're just going to check really quick, make sure that that spring is captured in there, and it is. I can't pull it out. So now we're going to finish the job. I'm just compressing that spring in, and I'm going to push down that pin to go all the way through, just to make sure. Just want to make sure that spring is compressed in as you're pushing down on that pin. So I want to make sure it grabs that little eyelet of that spring in there, which it did, and we're good. You can see it just staring at you right there. I always want to double check, get good clearance. When it's operating, perfect. All right, man, at this point, we got the springs replaced. You just got to put it back together. You can still see we got that pin hanging out right there. That's where that safety is going to locate. So you don't need to tap that pin all the way out. If you get to this point, you're good. Tap it all the way out, just stick it back in, either side, doesn't matter. All right, now we're going to take that safety blade and we're going to insert that. So you want to insert this safety blade and you want to compress it right here. That's how it builds that tension. So make sure it's in there, and we're going to go ahead and drop it in, and that little lead leg is what's going to start the tension. So you're going to compress it. Simple as that. Line up the holes. All right, so you get your holes lined up, you know, then just take your 1/16 inch punch just to make sure they're completely lined up, you know, kind of using that punch as a guide. And what I like to do is kind of hold it, just give it a few taps and kind of feel it going in. All right, once it's started to grab that safety blade, we can go ahead and get it back on the bench block and tap away on it. And then you can use your punch as well, you know, to give you a little more offset so you're not potentially hitting anything else. Got my 1/8 inch punch, just kind of squaring up on that pin, give it a few solid taps. There we go. Just check that safety blade function, make sure you got tension. It should be springing back and forth, just like that. All right, good. So we got our trigger return spring replaced as well. And believe it or not, everything else kind of held in place over here under tension. And if you're careful, kind of pressing against it, should work, but if not, just put it back together just like this. So you got, you know, your slide stop here, drops in right here on this pin, slide stop spring right here. You know, we already went over the safety, locates on this pin, and there's the spring and the orientation it's in. Now let's make sure we put the trigger bar on there correctly. So we'll take our trigger bar. You could easily drop it in like this, but that would be wrong because we want that little notch cut out to be facing down. There we go. There's a notch cut out right there facing down. This is the orientation we wanted in right here. And the notch cut out needs to rest against that pin like that. And you should have this, you know, longer portion facing up towards the top of the frame there. So this is the correct orientation for the trigger bar right here. And now we're gonna go ahead and wind around that trigger return spring. So much lighter you can do it with your finger, it's so easy. Nice and handy, good little tips there. This one is important. All right, we're gonna drop it right inside plastic frame now. Just gonna go ahead and get your trigger in there first. Going to kind of nosedive and locate just like this, and compressing everything, holding it together, pushing it straight down, holding on the front there, pushing that back straight in. Make sure you got everything over here, but do not forget this little guy. Oh man, it's so easy to do. I'm so glad I caught this. So if you do start to forget because you're following me, at least we got it started, all right? And that is something that is somewhat handy, at least get everything captured. And just push it back up. Just throw this little guy back in there, that little takedown pin cover, and just compress it and just push it back in with the frame, and we're good. Don't forget that little guy. It's really easy to do. All right, at this point, we're pretty dang good. So we got our little takedown pin cover in place. You know, and the way that works, it just snaps down, snaps up. We don't have our pins in yet, so don't play with everything too much. And we got our slide stop in place, and we got our safety in place, and we got our trigger bar in the proper orientation. You should see this piece sticking up all the way through, you know, the polymer frame and dang near to the top of the aluminum frame there. All right, so let's go ahead and put our takedown pins in. Those plastic pins, they're universal, they're the same. Give them a couple taps. They kind of fit in there a little looser than most. All right, so they're just held in by tension, plastic, simple. So we are pretty much done. All we have to do is throw the slide on and put our little takedown pin in place. So get your slide. Remember, we got everything put back together. Should look just like this. Take one more good look at it all. Go ahead and put your slide on. All right, and if you get to this point, you're like, oh man, it's not going on. Push down your safety. You're gonna pull back, push down your little takedown pin cover. Get that little half circle lined up with that big circle there, and we're gonna drop in our smooth takedown pin. Once it's all lined up, you can use your punch to assist all the way through, and then your little takedown pin cover, just snap it right back up in place, and we're good to go. That's it. So let's do a quick little function check, and then we'll get a good trigger pull reading. All right, so we're doing a function check. You have to have an empty magazine, right, because it's got a mag safety in there. So empty mag in there. All right, we're gonna test the safety and see how everything functions. So throw it on safe, pull the trigger, nothing, good. All right, place it on fire, pull the trigger. Woo, that is nice. All right, keep it depressed, and we're gonna have to obviously push that slide forward. Let's listen for that reset. There we go, beautiful. All right, that feels good. All right, let's go ahead and see what we get for a 5-pull modified trigger pull average. Let's see what we got. 2 pounds, 15.9 ounces. All right, let's take a few more to confirm. 3 pounds, 1 ounce. 3 pounds, 0.2 ounces. 2 pounds, 9.6 ounces. 2 pounds, 15.6 ounces. All right, so right there, 2 pounds, 14.3 ounces. So right at about 3 pounds. I mean, we're high twos there. So 2 pounds, and you're pretty much right at 3 pounds, which is nice. 3-pound trigger pull, we started at 4 3/4, so about 1 3/4 pounds of a reduction. So almost 2 pound reduction. Very nice. Well, there you have it, guys. Nice little 35% trigger pull reduction for the Ruger LC9s EC9s. Can't ask for more than that. So putting you right in that sweet spot, 3-pound range, really fantastic. You know, it's got that trigger safety and a lot of other kind of weird things you got to deal with anyway. So it feels good to have a nice 3-pound clean trigger pull that you can consistently predict. You know, nice clean break on it as well, and the mag safety. So many little safety features on this pistol, so I think it makes it a lot more desirable having a nice, smooth, clean braking trigger. You got a massive safety blade sticking out here to contend with, and then you got your mag safety to play with too. It's not bad. I like this little pistol, but some of those safety features kind of make it a little hindrance, but having this nice, light, smooth, clean trigger pull makes a world of difference. Really excited about this, and I'm glad you guys asked about it. Thank you, MCARBO Brotherhood. I really appreciate your support. You guys have been there from the beginning, helping us with all kinds of ideas and helping us troubleshoot things and even R&D test things. Get on over to the Brotherhood, the forum. If you're not already, MCARBO has got a great community over there, so forum.mcarbo.com, and then also like, subscribe, comment here on YouTube, or share around, you know, the internal community, all those forums out there. Really appreciate your help. You guys have been amazing. Thank you, MCARBO Brotherhood, for all your ideas and your support. As always, happy shooting.